Hello there, and many thanks for joining us on the program. I am Imonia Marere. August 30 every year is marked as the International Day of Support for Victims of Enforced Disappearances. It has been commemorated since 2011 when the United Nations instituted the day by a resolution of the General Assembly. Enforced disappearance refers to arrest, detention, or abduction of persons by agents of the state or those acting with state authorization or support, whose whereabouts are unknown in many countries. In very many states of the world, people vanish without trace, some with the knowledge of the state. And when we mean the state, the government. The United Nations says enforced disappearance is a crime against humanity, and even though it is prohibited under international human rights law, it continues to be used across the world as a method of repression and stifling of dissent. The UN has a committee on enforced or involuntary disappearances, a body of independent experts which monitors the implementation of the Convention for the Protection of All Persons Against Enforced Disappearances by state parties. Now, according to the International Committee of the Red Cross, in its 2021 report, 44,000 Africans disappeared in the year 2020. Now, over half of that number, about 23,000 persons, disappeared in Nigeria alone. The report indicates that more than 90% of the cases in Nigeria result from conflicts in the northeast, and 57% of the victims are children and women. This is hardly surprising, since there are thousands of citizens on countless kidnappers' camps across the country, some of whom may never return. This development has brought to the fore a new dynamic mix into the whole issue of disappearances. On the other hand, Nigeria's anti-terror law allows authorities to hold people without charge or trial, and often without contact with the outside world, thus increasing the risk of disappearances without trace. Unlike some other countries, Nigeria has no missing persons register, which makes it difficult to keep track of missing or disappeared persons. With the absence of official data, private and non-governmental bodies have struggled to keep some form of records, calling to question the accuracy of such figures. Now, how accurate is the Icrc report on Nigeria, since there is no database? What is the procedure adopted in collating the data so produced? And given that there are now non-state actors involved in the disappearances of persons, how can institutions of the state and even non-governmental organizations be of any help? How can such protocols, mechanisms, and methods be put in place, and by who? Some victims of disappearances are family breadwinners. What are the economic, social, and psychological impacts on their immediate dependents, their communities, and the society at large? Join us in our discourse as we look at the cases of enforced disappearances, or what is also referred to as involuntary disappearances. That's the program today. We'll return in a moment, and we will be meeting our guest analysts. Thank you so much for staying with us. We have joining us three guest analysts. First, let's meet Aliyu Dawobe. Aliyu Dawobe is the spokesperson for the International Committee of the Red Cross, the Icrc. He's joining us virtually via Zoom. Of course, the Icrc generated the figures that we will be dealing with today. Mr. Dawobe, thank you so much for joining us. All right here in the studio with us are Catherine and Guy. Catherine is a program and advocacy coordinator, democracy and accountability of the Open Society Initiative for West Africa, OSIWA. Thank you, Catherine, for joining us. Also joining us is Fiki Obaro. Bryce Obaro, of course, is a legal practitioner and he is a legal officer with Clean Foundation. Thank you so much, Mr. Obaro, for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, let's turn our attention to Mr. Dawobe first, so that he can, of course, set the tone and the basis for our discussion. Mr. Dawobe, I hope you can hear us now. Mr. Dawobe, we can see you, but can you hear us? You need to speak up, Mr. Dawobe. You need to speak up. You need to unmute your microphone so that we can hear you at this end. We appear to be having some technical problems with the link with Mr. Dawobe. But as soon as we sort that out, we should go to him because we need to get some facts from Mr. Dawobe to drive this discussion. Well, let's come to the studio here, Catherine. The 2020 report of enforced disappearances seem to have very high figures. I mean, continent-wide. 44,000 persons across the continent. And when we say enforced disappearances, is that to say that all 44,000 persons are missing and cannot be found? Or what exactly is the situation?
Thank you so much for inviting me here to this program. And, you know, talking about the figures, it might look like the figure is high, but I also do think that it isn't even the correct picture of things. Because I think if Mr. Dawobe comes back, he would tell us how they arrive at such figures. Or one of the things that they use, you know, to arrive at the figures, if you look at their website, they say they report on cases that have been reported to them on missing persons, which means that some of the cases that have not been reported are not even captured in those numbers. I think that the number is also not high, because if you look at across the continent, the number of armed conflicts, non-international armed conflicts that we have in the continent is high. And so it is expected, you know, that when you have situations of non-international armed conflict, that you would have disappearances. And so for me, I think that the number is actually moderate. I don't think that it is even the correct picture.
South Sudan, for instance, has been a hotbed of conflict for some years now. And in 2020, it had 5,000 persons who disappeared.
Yes, indeed. And I'm actually even, you know, the conversation, you know, when you look at the working group on enforced disappearances, when you look at the figures that are reported as people who are missing and the figures that the working group has of reports that they have received from the continent, they have even also, you know, agreed with this position that there's something wrong with the numbers because of the fact that when you have conflicts, ongoing conflicts in this nature, you have disappearances by non-state actors, you have disappearances by state actors, you have people that are missing and unaccounted for as a result of the conflict. And so, yes, looking at the numbers again, they look worrying, they look disturbing, but I keep on saying that I'm not even sure that those figures are the correct picture of things.
Mr. Obaro, that brings us to the whole issue because the UN definition of enforced disappearance seems to place a lot of emphasis on state actors. But as we know today, in almost every conflict across the continent, there seems to be more activity by non-state actors and groups that are making persons disappear.
Yeah, basically, just as Catherine rightly stated, this number from ICRC can't really be clearly defined or definite as the number or caseload of missing persons that you have basically in Nigeria and more generally Africa, as it were. If you could recall, in 2019, ICRC's report basically stated that there were 22,000, and then a year after, they just got 8,000 additional registration of missing persons, and that increased to 23,000. So it basically means that their case loss is dependent on reports from the public who have showed interest or who have indicated interest in their loved ones being missing. We do also still understand that a lot of non-state actors perpetrate issues that galvanize and increase the number of missing persons in Africa, basically. And unless we have a proper database where we can really indicate the number of persons that get missing on a daily basis, we can't really have or appropriate the number of missing persons as we have in Africa and in Nigeria in particular. And so we are trying to say basically that this number is quite low because we do know that on a daily basis there are reports of conflicts, there are reports of persons getting missing, there are reports of abductions, there are reports of kidnappings, and basically even the police, who is the first point of contact when there are issues regarding missing persons, can't even give you an accurate data of those that are missing in the country. And so it's something that calls for concern, it's something that calls for more efforts and more concerted efforts by governments, stakeholders, individuals, and Nigerians at large.
Okay, Mr. Dawobe, we're happy that you are back with us now. We hope that you can hear us, and we just go straight on to ask you how the ICRC generated this data that we are contending with right now. What was the process adopted in generating this data?
Thank you very much for inviting me. I hope you can hear me well, right?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes, okay. I'm sorry for the network issues. For this data that we released last week, it's a data that has been assembled not just in 1 year, but it was assembled since 2013 when we started this operation of reunification of people that are affected by violence. So it's not a data that is just within a year or two, but it's a data that has been running all this time. And the way we get this data is to pitch this out to the people that the ICRC, the Red Cross, I mean, when I say the ICRC, I mean the International Committee of the Red Cross, together with the Nigerian Red Cross Society, we come together and inform people that we are doing this, because we know in conflict situations, all the experiences we have in other countries of the world, including Nigeria, whenever you are having conflicts going on, people get separated with their families. So this data that we are giving is limited to the northeast of Nigeria. It has nothing to do with the northwest of Nigeria. It has very little to do with the north central states and also the southern part of Nigeria, where people get separated but then don't go very far. But in the Lake Chad region where the conflict is going on is actually something that is cutting across countries. People can easily jump from one country to the other and vice versa. So this made reunification very, very difficult. So like I said, this data was assembled in more than about a decade ago, where people come to us, people who know that we are conducting these activities, people who know that we are doing the activities of reunification, to come to us to say, okay, we have had a lost one since the conflict happened, we have lost him, lost contact with him, so we want you to help us to see how we can get reunited with this person. So this is how we get the information. We also share information about offices of the Nigerian Red Cross Society, 26 states in Nigeria, including Abuja, and also our own office. And we also share our what we call community contact center number, which is a toll-free number that people can call. So generally we believe that this is like the figure we have is like a tip of the iceberg, which is just a small figure, a fraction of a figure of people that have disappeared. Perhaps if people know that we are doing this activity, they will come down to us and talk to us more about the missing families, and we will be able to see what we can do.
Now, from your account, Mr. Daobe, it means that, I mean, you are collaborating with certain other agencies like the Red Cross Society of Nigeria. And I also want to believe that this is also the same process in other countries across the continent, that you are collaborating with local organizations to put these figures together. Now, are you also collaborating with, say, some non-governmental organizations or even international organizations like the United Nations in putting this together?
For other international organizations, it's actually a good monitoring, coordination to know who is doing what and how we can complement each other. But our main partners in this, either in Nigeria or other countries of Africa, is the National Red Cross or National Red Crescent Society, depending on the country and what, either it is a cross or a crescent working there. So they are our main partners that we collaborate with in this activity. We work very closely with them. In Nigeria, we have a lot of volunteer force coming from the Nigerian Red Cross Society who know the context, who know the terrain, who would be able to bicycle to very far away villages to find out addresses that have been mentioned by people whose families are missing, so that we will be able to trace to see how we can reunite people here. Just to mention something very important, in conflict situation, you know, a lot of people get arrested again. So this separation can also lead to people are still in detention by the authorities of the country where they are operating, but then the families don't know. So this also, because we conduct an activity we call detention visit. In Nigeria, we visit almost all the detention facilities in Nigeria. So when we meet people whose families are looking for them, we try to see how we can work with the authorities, with government authorities, with detention authorities, so that we can reunite them with their families. Reunification cannot mean Icrc coming out to say, hey, get this guy out of prison. This is not our mandate. This is not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to try as much as possible to inform the authorities that people who are in detention have the right for the families to know that they are alive and they are healthy. This is what we do diplomatically. We pitch this to the authorities, and they understand most of the times, and they were able to reunite them with what we call Red Cross messages. Just a short message of, hey, I am Aliyu and I am alive, I am in detention. It doesn't mean that we have to even mention the detention areas. If the authorities don't want us to do this because of security reasons, we can just tell the families that this guy is alive and healthy, and he's sending his regards to you. At least the families will have this calmness of mind. You know that the breadwinner or one of their loved ones is in detention and he's okay, and when things are okay, he will surely be reunited. This is one aspect. Otherwise, if these authorities allow, we can even move people from point A to point B to be able to see their relatives that are either in detention, or if this is not possible, we can connect them in other countries, maybe Chad, Niger, Cameroon, and back in Nigeria. You find someone who is out in Yaoundé in Cameroon, I'm citing an example, and then bringing him back to Nigeria will take not just a day, maybe a week or more, a month, sometimes it takes longer. You'd be able to connect them with a telephone call, just to say, hey, this is Aliyu and he's healthy and alive, but he's in Cameroon and you will be reunited soon. These are some of the procedures that we follow. What scenarios we can engage our forensic experts if people have died and there are graves that could be used, I mean, to get this expert to find out whether these people are relatives of these people that are looking for them. This is actually much more technical, but this is what we could also do.
So how much cooperation has the Icrc been receiving from state actors especially, and as it has now become very well known, non-state actors that are also holding people against their way or putting them in forced detentions and all of that. How much of the cooperation are you getting from both state and non-state actors in this regard?
Thank you for this. For the state actors, it's actually a good collaboration for us to work closely with them, to inform them of our mandate, of our activities, and how this is going to reduce the pains civilian populations are facing during conflict and the aftermath of conflict. This is actually something that's been going on, and it's a good collaboration that we've been doing with the state authorities. Non-state armed actors is a little complicated. We always put on the table that this is the activity that the International Committee of the Red Cross is doing, mandated to protect and assist people that are affected by conflict. This is something that is really the mandate that we are doing. We are not out there to apportion blame to one person or the other, but we are only in the side or on the side of the civilian populations that are suffering from the effects of the conflict that is going on. So we try to make sure that people understand this so that we will be able to get people reunited with their families.
All right, Mr. Daobe, please stay with us. I would also like you to comment on the kind of psychosocial support that the Icrc is giving. But at this point in time, let me turn to Catherine. Catherine, I should ask you, you have said somewhere else that there is a technical angle to the definition of disappeared persons. What exactly do you mean?
So, there is a lot to unpack, from what Mr. Daobe said here.
Yes.
And, it's also tied to this thing that I said about the technical aspect. And this is the issue of responsibility. That when somebody disappears, there should be accountability. There should be somebody who is made to answer for the disappearance of someone. You cannot just wake up one day and you disappear, and then nobody answers for it. So this is a primary responsibility of government, because the issue of disappearance has a dual edge to it. So there is the responsibility of government not to disappear people, but there also is the responsibility of government to prevent people from disappearing. So whether the disappearance is by a non-state actor or a state actor, the government still has a responsibility. And so when you look at it in that sense, because one of the things that we're trying to look at in that article was whether, a missing person is a disappeared person, and all that. So there's some bit of differentiation to be made in that. But when there is the allegation or the suspicion that somebody has been disappeared by someone, then the state has a responsibility to investigate, to find out who disappeared this person. So even if the state says, for example, there is a case where the state has been taken to court to say that we believe that this person is in your custody, and the state says, no, he is not with us. But the state has the additional responsibility to support the family of the disappeared person to find out what happened to that person. So it is not enough for the state to just say that, oh, I'm not responsible. This might have been a non-state actor or something else might have happened. The state has that additional burden on itself to assist the family in finding out what happened to their family member in the case of a disappearance.
So that's the whole question of accountability by the state.
Yes.
Now, Barrister Obaro, from your earlier intervention and from what Mr. Daobe said, there is a missing link here. The major missing link is that of information aggregation. Because as it is today now, the figure that we have now that the Icrc has given us from what Mr. Daobe has said is a tip of the iceberg, because it's almost limited to just one region of the country. How do we resolve that missing link? What do we need to do to aggregate information and data enough to at least give a near clear representation of what we are talking about, of missing or disappeared persons?
Okay, thank you very much. I could recall sometime in 2017, the federal government set up a national technical committee for the management and establishment of a database for missing persons in Nigeria. And unfortunately, since then, nothing really has been done regarding that. Also, basically, sometime in 2018, the International Center for Investigative Reporting also still did a documentary, premiered such documentary, whereby there were a lot of persons who gave testimonies being missing, and there certainly were no records, certainly, to ascertain the number of persons that were missing in the country. It then basically means that we do not have a strong information and sharing system, and also it also still borders down to state actors, local intelligence, and intelligence sharing and gathering. And so it is the responsibility of government, and also with support from development partners and other well-meaning Nigerians, to have a centralized information system whereby persons who have issues regarding disappearances of their loved ones can make reports, and then they are registered, and government has a centralized system regarding that. And during my last intervention, I recalled that the first point of call in the event of disappearances or even missing persons in Nigeria has to do with the local police station, because these are the first outpost to Nigerians report situations or circumstances regarding the missing or the disappeared, if especially it is not one done by the state actor, as it were. And so how are we going to aggregate data from the Nigerian Police Post down to the Nigeria Identity Management Commission, and also NITDA, in having a centralized system whereby Nigerians, wherever they are, can have access to their loved ones that have been missed, or to the loved ones that have disappeared, and also find solace that the government is doing something about it. And that is why it is crucial that the government establishes a database for Nigerians where we can actually have a verifiable data of persons that have disappeared or missing in Nigeria. And basically, we also still do know that even though CSOs, that are civil society organizations, development partners, can come in to support government, we cannot have accurate information or accurate data if the government does not take the lead. And so it is imperative that the government, state actors do come together, provide data, provide information on the number of cases reported for missing persons in Nigeria. And when we do that, we can now galvanize this into a centralized register where we can now say so that we have a case in Nigeria.
It appears that we are up, against a big obstacle here, because as it is, as Nigerians, as citizens, the Nigerian system does not have one single database today that is reliable. I mean, the data of citizens are scattered in different agencies and organizations of government, and even the communication companies seem to have more data. The banks seem to have more data than government. So how do we go about, and this has taken several years to put together, and is still not together. So how are we going to be able to say tomorrow that, we are going to have a near accurate data, not just of missing or disappeared persons, but of Nigerians themselves?
Yeah, and that is the main reason why I said the government has to take the lead. They need to take the lead. Just as we stated, we have different data avenues in Nigeria. You have the BVN, you have NIMS, you have national identity voters card. There are various data of Nigerians which at the end of the day will not give you a specific number of even, in fact, the question then is, when last did we even do a census in Nigeria? We should go back there. Do we really have an actual number of the number of Nigerians as at 2021? It's just speculation. And so basically, the government needs to have a centralized data system where all data of Nigerians, from the banking sector to the individual, to the private, to the formal and to the informal sector, are aggregated into a particular, for us to know the number of Nigerians we have. And then from there, it will be easier for you to tease out those that are missing and those that are disappeared. But until we have that database, we will keep on having issues ascertaining the number of missing or disappeared persons in Nigeria unless families of friends of victims report these cases.
Now, Kate, how have the challenges of insecurity in Nigeria, particularly so issues of insurgency and terrorism in parts of the country, and of course the response of government by putting in place anti-terror laws, how have all of that increased the risk of missing persons or disappearing persons?
So a few years ago, I met a group of women in the northeast of Nigeria that were advocating for their missing husbands, missing children, missing relatives generally. And they had been going about this advocacy for a number of years, you know, and it was so impressive what these women had done, because they on their own started having a record, a database, where basically they had a paper where they were writing the names of their sons, of their husbands that disappeared in the course of the insurgency. Some of them, it was during the raids by Boko Haram. Some of them, it was the aftermath of the raids by Boko Haram, where the Nigeria state security actors came into communities, rounded up men and young boys, and, you know, took them away. And, you know, so when I was saying there's a lot to unpack in this issue of disappearances, because one of the points about disappearance is also arrest and detention incommunicado. So the state arrests and detains you, and your relatives don't have any information about your whereabouts. And these women continued documenting, continued engaging state actors, asking them questions. In fact, their position is so sad. When you sit down to talk with them, the grief, the trauma, you know, that these women are going through, just to get a response from the state. Are these people with you? Are they with Boko Haram? We don't know. You know, so this is the burden that these people carry. And it's the seriousness of this kind of trauma. And I am happy that you mentioned, you know, that we're going to ask again, you know, the representative of the Icrc. I don't know whether this is part of their mandate. The kind of psychosocial support that is available to these people. Because when you speak with them and hear their experiences, you know that the state has a lot more to do. When you look at the international provision on what the state should do, one of the things that is provided is that the state should treat this issue with compassion and respect. But when you speak with these people, they're treated as non-humans. They're treated in a very bad way. You know, some of them cannot get responses. Some of them will write. Some of them have even, you know, lost money, because somebody will tell them that if you give us a certain amount of money, we can help you get information. And they've suffered ill treatment. You know, so this is also a part of the law of enforced disappearances, that the victims and not just the people disappeared, but they're also the relatives of the people disappeared, because they suffer ill treatment, they suffer torture, you know, as a result of their relatives being missing. And so, you know, these are some of the issues that attach to this issue, especially, you know, with regards insurgencies in the northeast and in other parts of the country.
All right, that will be a point of departure. When we return from this short break, we'll be going over to Mr. Aliyu, and we'll be talking about the kind of psychosocial support that victims of disappearances can get and should get. All right, thank you so much for staying with us. Mr. Aliyu Dawobe, let's come to you now. You are very, very aware that behind every missing person, there are countless people who are suffering one kind of anguish or the other as a result of their missing relatives, or even victims directly themselves. Their communities also suffer, and ultimately society at large. How much of psychosocial support can these people get, and how much are they getting?
Thank you very much again. So, first of all, to create a day like this, for these people to know that there are organizations, there are people that are concerned about their plight, and there are people that are working towards seeing that they are able to get reunited with their families is one of the first psychosocial support that they would get, at least for people to see the concern other people have. Also for people to understand, to these relatives to understand that yes, their concern is not just their concern, but their concerns is beyond their concern, and is being also a concern to other organizations and a lot of other people out there. This is one of the psychosocial support. Note that these people really need a lot of answers. Where are their relatives? How can they get reunited? How can they be able to see these relatives again in their lifetime? So these are answers we have to provide. These are answers we need to provide to these people, and these are answers we have to make sure that we are able to provide to these people. We understand the anguish they are going through. We understand the issues they are passing through. Psychosocial support in this respect, when people are affected, really we try to understand the feelings. You can only say you understand the feelings, but you actually don't know the feelings. So understanding is one of the key things we are trying to see, and then see how we can support. They pass through a lot. So what we do when we find situations like this, we have our experts that are good in psychosocial support. So they would be able to sit them down and tell them how they would be able to keep living. They will instill hope in their minds so that they will know that yes, of course they have someone who is missing, of course they have someone, the loved one, who is no more in the family, who they don't know whether he's alive or dead, but at least some people are telling him, yes, we need to keep moving, we have to continue to move. This is one aspect. If you look at the indices that we have globally, just to mention, about 210,000 people are missing. Not just like in Nigeria, we still believe that this is like a tip of the iceberg. In Africa, we have these 44,000 people that are missing. And if you look at the indices, you see 44,000 people, and then Nigeria is taking 24,000 of these cases missing, more than 50% of the caseload in Africa. You are going to see all the countries that have been affected are countries that have conflicts, and these conflicts have lingered for more than a decade. Libya, for example, is taking large sum of the 44,000. South Sudan, you can see conflicts has been going on in South Sudan. Democratic Republic of Congo. You can mention Somalia, for example. These are countries that have gone through a lot, and people are missing a lot of their families. Coming down to Nigeria, you can see that the countries have lingered now. The conflict has lingered now for more than 12 years. And then you can have people that have jumped from one IDP camp to the other, and then you could see, and then people are moving with their families. Definitely you will have to have people missing. Either they are alive, either they are dead. We still have to keep informing these people that yes, life will have to continue. One major challenge we are having is that these families pass through a lot of situations. When a breadwinner is missing, for example, or a loved one, mostly you find the head of the family is the one missing, or maybe, of course, when he's missing, you find the children are the ones suffering. Difficulties for the families to have access to his bank accounts is there because there is no any legal that this guy is dead. So the families are still lingering with crisis, and then they still have looking for food to eat, but then there is nothing to eat. Maybe he has something in his bank account. So we are working closely with authorities to see how we can get some legal ways where after sometimes these families should be able to have access to the documents of this person, and will be able to have access some assets that he has, so that their life will keep going on. But this is really something that we are working on.
All right, Mr. Barrow, is there any form of legal support that can be offered victims of disappearances, missing persons, and their families?
Well, basically, I believe there should be. I believe we can offer legal support. Because basically from state actors, you find out that some of these enforced disappearances are due to extrajudicial killings, arbitrary arrest, and even families of loved ones till today do not even know where their families do exist. And so there have also still been reports or allegations that enforced disappearances have taken place in so and so detention center, so and so police station as such. And so when you have this information or these figures as such, then it's imperative that legal action could be taken against the states regarding production of these persons that have assumed or presumed to have disappeared or are presumed to have been missing, as it were, when you have a definite information regarding that. However, we've also still stated the fact that the absence of a credible register makes it difficult to be certain or definite about the cases of disappearances of an individual. But when there is certainty regarding or the allegation is proven true regarding the absence or disappearance of a person, then legal support can suffice. And legal support can be effective against the state and even against non-state actors when you are sure. One other important ingredient regarding these disappearances, which we have not mentioned, is trafficking. Trafficking, it's a very important tool that has necessitated the disappearances of persons, even without their families being aware of their present state. And so you have enablers, you have promoters, and you have the victims who have trafficked and are somewhere wallowing in a particular place in Libya, in Morocco, even in Italy, and do not even have contact with their loved ones, all in the premise of false promise and false hope. When such information is being gotten and certainty regarding those who were involved in the disappearances of their loved ones can be proven, then legal support also can be taken regarding that.
Catherine, are there global best practices that Nigeria, for instance, can benefit from in terms of psychosocial support on one hand and forensic investigations into missing persons?
Yes, there are global best practices, and in some other jurisdictions where this law of enforced disappearances has received judicial pronouncements, there are things that have been put in place to say these are the things that are expected of a government. One of them I mentioned, that is the responsibility of the state, to respond. There is the element, of course, we've talked about it, but that's also the right to truth, which Mr. Liu also mentioned in terms of finding out what happened. So the right to truth also has with it communication. Some of these things are not even as technical as they're not even as difficult. So there is the issue of forensics and there's the issue of scientific data, in trying to find out what happened to the person. But there's also the issue of communication. How do you communicate with families? How do you talk to them? How do you respond to their queries about their missing loved ones? So these things do not even require any kind of capacity or any kind of funding. It just basically requires you to treat people with dignity and respect. That people have a concern that their family member has gone missing. They have a right to truth to know what happened, but they also have the right to human dignity, basic human dignity in response, to respond to them to say, okay, whether we know or we don't know what happened, or at least we're going to make an effort to support investigation into what happened. That's one. Another thing, again, is this issue of missing register that we've been talking about. Beyond missing register, one of the things that are also important is setting up a panel or something that enables investigations to happen. And so the issue of the forensics, and that's where that comes in, that there should be a process I don't know whether it's a different body. A few years ago, the National Assembly said they were going to bring some bill before the House on missing persons and all that. I don't know if that bill was going to also go hand in hand with a process of investigation, but there has to be a process of investigation to find out what happened to missing persons. So we're not too caught up in the issue of just having the missing persons register. After we have it, so what? Then what? We should have a process of investigation to find out what happened to the people who are missing. So there are a number of some of these best practices. There's the issue of restitution, and then there's the issue of non-repetition, that even when people have been found, that you have to make sure that people do not suffer disappearance again. We've had situations where people have been abducted in Nigeria, re-abducted and re-abducted. That the government has the responsibility to make sure that there's non-repetition, that there's not abduction again after somebody has been disappeared.
What is the place of, say, an institution of state like the National Human Rights Commission in all of this, Mr. Barrow?
The National Human Rights Commission constitutionally are empowered to protect the rights and interests of Nigerians. And basically, they ought to play a leading role towards the issues regarding forced or enforced disappearances in Nigeria. And I do know that the National Human Rights Commission have started doing something regarding this. I think last week they said that they were going to launch a pilot scheme in Borno State. And I believe that with that, they've kickstarted the process. And I still do know that the National Technical Committee that was set up in 2017, the National Rights Commission, was empowered to play a key role. However, just as she stated, there was a legislation regarding the missing persons register that was introduced in the National Assembly sometime in 2018. Has it been passed? What is the process? What is the role of the National Rights Commission regarding that? And so the National Rights Commission can play a critical role based on the powers that it's authorized to play. We also still know critically that if the National Rights Commission, as at today, does not have a governing board.
It has now.
It has now.
It has now. It was inaugurated a few weeks back.
Thank you.
Yes.
So it certainly means that progress is made. Progress is made. And so while we appreciate the role of the state actors, while we appreciate the role of the federal government, we believe that the National Human Rights Commission should play an active role in aggregating this data, work with the security agencies, work with information providers, work with data providers, work in consonance with NITA, work in consonance with NIMC, try to have an aggregated data whereby they can champion the rights of those that have missing or disappeared in Nigeria.
Mr. Daobe, before I let you go, let me quickly highlight the issue that Mr. Barrow raised earlier on, that of migration, that is human trafficking. How serious is that aspect of it to the disappearance of persons or missing persons? Mr. Daobe, did you hear me?
Yes, I heard you.
Okay.
I heard you. Yes, I think it's something that is of big concern also. But then ICRC's mandate has very little to do with migration. Most of these other organizations handling this. The mandate of the International Committee of the Red Cross is mainly protection and assistance of people that are affected by armed conflict and violence. So we stick to this mandate. We allow other actors, humanitarian actors, to do their own job as professionals, but then ours is mainly in support of people that are separated, related to conflicts and other situations of violence in Nigeria and across the world, and this is what we are doing.
And since conflicts in most African countries have cross-border implications and all of that, it's also possible that you could carry some of your work, some of your support across state borders.
Sure. Because if you even the like chat crisis, if you look at it, you are really going to see that it's cutting across 4 different countries. So it's the same thing. If we have people missing in Nigeria and we are lucky, our office in Cameroon, in Yaoundé, is able to get these people, then they can easily get in touch with the Icrc in Nigeria. Likewise, in Niger, we've had situations where we try to relate with DIFA, our office in DIFA, so that we would be able to reunite people that are affected. Chad is the same thing, and then of course Nigeria is one of the countries. So Lake Chad region is a country that is accommodating 4 countries, and I think that is why this statistics that we are having, about 24,000 people are really available, because people can easily jump into countries. Meeting with the IDPs that have managed to come like into Maiduguri, you are sometimes going to see that most of them have to go to Cameroon first before they jump back to Nigeria, because first they have to get safety, and then they try to see how they can connect back and come back to their own country. So in this case, you can have people really separated. Niger also, you can easily see people moving to Niger easily and then trying to reconnect back to Nigeria, and vice versa, also people from Niger coming. So you can see the dynamics of the Lake Chad region. And of course, we have also people missing or separated with their families in the north central states, where you have the conflict between farmers and herders going around. But this separation is for a short period. You can easily see that people don't go very far, so they get separated for a short period and then get reunited without even people knowing it. But just a few cases where you have people separated and they are taking some period, and they will get to us to say we really need to be supported in this regard. So I would say we've been doing this very well with the Nigerian Red Cross Society.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dawobe. Catherine, you have the last word here. How much support, or how do I put it now? How can the media, traditional and social media, help in this regard?
Through platforms like this, for instance, shedding light, creating awareness on, what is happening, what is going on. Like, Mr. Liu said, there are quite a number of people that don't even know that the Icrc exists to do these kinds of things. So through these kinds of platforms, creating awareness. And there's also need for investigative journalism, because for some who are being held in detention incommunicado, investigative journalism can help to find out where they are and to help to reunite them with their families. Creating these platforms for organizations like ours, to continue with our advocacy and awareness raising. I think that these are the things that we need to have more of these kinds of conversations and opportunities to victims or families as well, who want to share, what they have been going through, put names and faces, to victims, and not just data and numbers. 24,000 people just looks like data, but when you see people who have suffered the disappearance of their loved ones, then there might be a push even for the public, for the government to do something more about the situation.
Thank you so much. Well, I want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming on the program. Mr. Aliyu Dawobe is the spokesperson for the International Committee of the Red Cross in Nigeria, Icrc. Thank you very much for joining us at a very short notice. Thank you for your time. Catherine Angai is the Program and Advocacy Coordinator, Democracy and Accountability of the Open Society Initiative for West Africa, USIWA. Thank you so much for your time. And Mr. Fiki Obaro is the Legal Officer at the Clean Foundation in Abuja here. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for coming. And for you, our viewers out there, we want to thank you for investing your time with us. Please join us again when we bring you a fresh edition of the program People, Politics, and Power. Until then, keep safe and look out for your neighbors and your friends. Bye for now.